You think silence means peace. But sometimes, silence is the weapon they use when words no longer control you. It starts softly, a missed reply. A colder tone, a shift so small you almost convince yourself you imagined it. You tell yourself, they just need space. But space doesn't usually feel like punishment. It doesn't sound like a door closing inside your chest. Silence has a psychology. It isn't absence, it's direction. It teaches you to reach out first, to apologize for things you didn't do. To chase the person who's supposed to meet you halfway. You call it maturity, but deep down you start to bend, not to keep the peace, but to avoid their quiet. You wait for their voice the way a drowning person waits for air. You read old messages just to remember what it felt like when they cared. And every time they finally respond, you feel relief, not joy. That's what silence does, it starves you just enough to make crumbs feel like a feast. They don't have to yell to hurt you. They just have to stop speaking, and you'll do the rest. You'll overthink. You'll apologize. You'll shrink. Until the silence stops being punishment and becomes your new definition of love. Because silence, when used by someone who knows your heart, isn't peace. It's control, an invisible leash that keeps you coming back, even when you swear you're done. And maybe that's what nobody tells you, how silence can make you question your worth more deeply than words ever could. Because when they stop talking, you start hearing everything they never said. You think it's just distance. But this is where it begins, the quiet war that doesn't end in noise, it ends in surrender. This is where love becomes control. This is where silence stops being comfort. And starts becoming a cage you build for yourself. They say silence is golden. But in love, silence is power, especially when one person uses it to remind the other who depends more. At first, you mistake it for emotional maturity. You think, at least we're not fighting. But calm isn't always peace, sometimes it's suppression. Days pass. Their messages shorten, their tone flattens. You start counting every word like currency. One text feels like oxygen, 2 days of nothing feels like drowning. They don't have to tell you you're wrong, they let the silence say it. And slowly, you start changing yourself just to fill the void. You laugh softer. You question less. You choose your words like walking on glass. Because the last time you spoke your truth, it cost you their voice. This is how control hides in plain sight. Not through dominance, but through withdrawal. They don't push you, they disappear until you pull yourself back in line. Each time they return, you feel grateful. You confuse their presence with forgiveness. Relief replaces self-respect, and you call that love. Silence becomes a classroom where you learn obedience. You stop wanting honesty, and start craving response. And that's the trick. When silence becomes a reward system, you no longer chase connection, you chase relief. You start believing peace means avoiding conflict. But peace built on fear is just tension wearing perfume. They don't even have to plan it. Sometimes they've learned this behavior too. The art of withholding is protection, the illusion of distance as control. But intent doesn't change impact. Because silence, no matter the reason, teaches the heart to whisper when it wants to scream. You begin to feel smaller inside conversations. You nod instead of answering. You edit yourself before speaking. And one day you realize. You're in a relationship where silence speaks louder than truth. Control doesn't always sound like, do what I say. Sometimes it sounds like nothing at all. But here's the part that hurts the most. It's not just them. It's what their silence awakens in you. Because somewhere deep down, you've been here before. You've met this emptiness in different faces. And every time you thought it was love, it was really recognition. Recognition of a wound that never learned what love should sound like. And now the silence doesn't just come from them. It echoes from you. This is where the real war begins. Not between you and them. but between your need for connection, and your fear of it. You tell yourself you're fine. You tell your friends, it's not a big deal. But your body doesn't believe you. You still check your phone. You still rehearse what you'll say when they finally text back. Every silence makes your chest a little heavier, like holding your breath for too long. You start analyzing everything. What you said, how you said it, what tone you used, what they might have felt. You build a courtroom in your mind, defending yourself to a judge who never shows up. That's how emotional silence works, it turns you into both the prisoner and the interrogator. And the worst part? You start thinking maybe you deserve it. Maybe you are too much. Maybe you did say the wrong thing. Maybe love only stays if you shrink a little smaller each time. But that's the trick of control. It doesn't always come from the person who's quiet. It often comes from the part of you that fears losing them more than losing yourself. You remember how it started, the early days, when everything felt alive. The long calls, the endless talking, the comfort in their voice. They taught you how to feel seen. And now their silence teaches you how to disappear. But look closer. They're not the first person who made you earn love by proving you were worth it. You learned that language long ago. Maybe from a parent who only noticed you when you were quiet. Maybe from a first love who punished you with distance. And now, without realizing it, you've built your relationships around the same lesson. If I'm perfect, they'll stay. Silence becomes the mirror. It doesn't just reflect their control, it shows you your pattern. It forces you to face how often you trade peace for approval. You start remembering all the times you didn't speak up. All the times you said, it's okay, when it wasn't. All the times you mistook anxiety for love. That's the real conflict. You're not fighting them, you're fighting the version of you that believes love must be earned through endurance. But the moment you see it, something shifts. You realize silence isn't the enemy. It's the reflection, the moment life hands you a mirror and says, look. This is what you've been calling love. And when you see it for what it is, the need to chase begins to fade. Because understanding the pattern is the first step out of it. The next time they go quiet, you won't rush to fill the space. You'll let it echo, not as punishment, but as clarity. Because now you know, their silence isn't about you. It's about the control they lose when you stop playing the role. There's something you need to understand about silence. It doesn't begin with them. It begins with the patterns you haven't yet noticed in yourself. You keep ending up in the same kind of relationships. Different faces, same feeling. Because you're not chasing love, you're chasing familiarity. You're drawn to the kind of silence you once mistook for safety. Maybe you grew up believing that peace means staying quiet. That love means holding it together even when it hurts. So when someone pulls away, your instinct isn't to walk. It's to fix it. Because part of you still believes that silence can be solved. If you just love harder. But you can't fix what someone uses to control you. You can only understand what it's revealing about you. Every time you feel that pull to explain yourself. To chase closure. To beg for clarity. Pause. That's not love speaking. That's your nervous system reliving an old story. It's trying to protect you from rejection. By making you earn connection again. And that's why you keep repeating the same dynamic. Not because you're weak. But because your mind is wired to choose what it recognizes. And what it recognizes, is emotional distance. You confuse emotional intensity with emotional depth. You think the highs and lows mean passion. But they only mean imbalance. You've learned to feel alive through anxiety. So when peace arrives, you don't know how to trust it. It feels too quiet. Too still. Like something's missing. But nothing's missing. That stillness you resist, that's where real love lives. So how do you break the cycle? Not by becoming colder. And not by building higher walls. You break it by listening to your silence, instead of fearing it. Because silence isn't punishment, it's information. It's showing you where you overextend. Where you give more than you receive. Where you keep choosing people who can't meet you halfway. Because part of you is still afraid of being fully met. The healing starts when you stop reacting to silence. And start interpreting it. When someone withdraws, don't rush to fill the space. Observe it. Ask yourself, what part of me feels unsafe when I'm not being chosen? Because that question is where your control ends. And your power begins. You don't need to chase to prove your worth. You don't need to over-explain your emotions to be understood. And you don't need to break down to deserve softness. The moment you realize that love shouldn't make you doubt your value. You stop accepting silence as love. You stop mistaking distance for depth. And you begin to redefine what connection should feel like. When you finally stop chasing, you don't lose them. You find you. You discover how to sit with your own quiet. Without turning it into punishment. And that's where freedom starts. Not when they come back. Not when they finally explain. But when your peace no longer depends on the noise they make. That's the real breaking point. Not walking away in anger. But reclaiming the silence as your own. Because silence doesn't control you anymore. You do. If you've been on the receiving end of silence, I want you to stop chasing noise. Because silence isn't always punishment. Sometimes, it's protection. It's life's way of forcing you to listen to the things you've been avoiding. The patterns you keep repeating. The people you keep over-explaining yourself to. And the love you keep trying to earn. You have to understand something. You can't heal while you're still trying to prove your worth to someone who benefits from your confusion. When someone uses silence to control you, they're not creating space, they're creating power imbalance. And the moment you start begging for communication, you hand them exactly what they wanted. Your peace. So stop doing that. Stop begging for clarity from people who choose confusion. Stop explaining yourself to someone who already decided not to listen. Instead, redirect that energy inward. Ask yourself, why am I staying where I am constantly unheard? Because staying doesn't prove your love, it proves your fear. Fear of being alone, fear of rejection, fear of losing control. But here's the truth. You don't lose control when you walk away. You reclaim it. Silence can destroy you, yes. But only if you don't know how to use it. Learn to use silence as your teacher, not your punishment. Use it to see who you become when there's no one left to convince. Use it to rebuild the voice you silenced trying to be enough for someone else. Healing isn't about forgetting them. It's about remembering yourself. It's about understanding that love built on control isn't love, it's survival. And you're not meant to survive in love. You're meant to grow in it. So take a step back. Observe your silence. Instead of asking why they pulled away, ask why you kept reaching. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. No reply. No reaction. Just peace. And peace isn't found in someone else's return. It's found in your ability to stay grounded when they don't. You don't have to make them see your worth. You just have to stop handing it away. So when silence comes again, and it will, don't panic. Let it come. Let it show you what still hurts. Let it cleanse the parts of you that used to depend on chaos to feel alive. You'll notice something strange. It doesn't hurt as much as it used to. Because this time, you're not waiting for their voice. You're listening to yours. And that's how you heal. Not by winning them back. But by choosing yourself enough to never beg for love again. Remember this. Peace isn't their absence. It's your presence. And once you understand that, silence will never scare you again.